Good evening. We are live and excited to be live. Tonight we have a most amazing. One second, Cody, can you please take the dogs outside? Thank you. I have a full house of kids and guests and people, and we were talking right before this podcast about how fast food is one of the leading killers in the United States, and how most of us don't realize that what we put in our mouth determines not only how we feel every day, but it also determines our longevity, and it determines our ability to think. It determines our ability to be happy. So nutrition, and not just nutrition, but the actual health of our bellies and our entire digestive system are critical to the cultivation of whole health in body, in mind, in spirit. So, welcome everyone to this episode. We are on what date? It's crazy already. We're July the 12th. Yeah, July the 12th. Hard to believe. And it's summer. And summer, I think, is such a great time to talk about healing our gut. And I went to an amazing event, which was urban farming. Okay. It was probably about a year ago. And it was about how to take your backyard and make your life healthier. Everything from keeping your own chickens to raising your own herbs to, keeping a beehive and using the honey for medicinal as well as delicious purposes. And there, shining from across the tented area, was this beautiful woman who just glowed. And I'm literally saying the truth. She glowed with health. And I'm like, damn, I'm standing there sweating and, sticky fingers from honey. And I'm just like, why is she so healthy and not bothered by the day? And I went over, and my friend Cameron introduced me to her friend Carley, the fairy gut mother. I fell in love as a marketer, meeting somebody who has not only branded herself, but has international. I'm going to let her talk in a minute about her national media, how she's being welcomed and embraced by Americans everywhere, that are really seeking health through their gut. They say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Listen, the way to your heart, the way to heart health, the way to brain health, the way to sexual health is all through that gut. So I am so excited to introduce our dear friend and amazing expert on digestive health and disorders, Carley Smith. And if there were people to clap, they'd be doing it. Hi, Carley.
Hey, hi. Thank you so much for having me.
You see how she glows? I mean,
Oh,
it's
thank
amazing. You're
you.
just so wonderful. But I
Thank
wanted to
you.
start by asking, you have interesting letters by your name, right? And so can you introduce yourself and your qualifications, if you will, and talk a little bit about how Fairy Godmother got started?
Sure. So I am Carley Smith. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner and a certified GAPS practitioner. And so that's gut and psychology syndrome. And it's basically a gut healing diet. That's what I went on kind of in my gut health journey. And that's what really helped to heal me and sparked my interest in gut health. And I actually became interested in all of that after being diagnosed with Lyme disease. And I was pretty sick. I went the whole antibiotics route, which was at that time the most common treatment for Lyme, and eventually felt like I was taking medications for my medications. They were doing more harm on my body than good. So I went off all of my medicine and just started doing my own research. And at that time, this was in 2014, and gut health was not as widely discussed as it is now. So I guess, for better or for worse, there wasn't a whole lot of information about it. I think now it can almost be too overwhelming. So I guess maybe I did start out at the right time, but I did stumble upon something called the GAPS diet, which is the gut and psychology syndrome. It's an elimination and reintroduction diet, and it's all about healing the gut. And within just a few short weeks of being on the GAPS diet, I noticed significant improvement in my health. And that's when I knew.
GAPS? As GAPS?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So, just within a few short weeks of going on that diet, I noticed improvements in my health. And that's when I knew that this needed to get out to more people, because more people, are struggling, and the gut is the foundation for our health. So at that time I was working in finance, so totally unrelated. I went back to school, studied nutrition, and then started Fairy Gut Mother. And here I am.
Now, I understand that you've gotten some national attention recently, and people love that stuff. So can you share what's been going on?
I mean, what has been going on?
I've been getting a lot of articles placed and interest in what you do.
Yeah, so I do write, some articles for various magazines, and then I'll do some news segments. I was on Dr. Oz.
That's huge. Dr. Oz is huge.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that was exciting. Thank you. And various local news segments and things like that, but really just anything to kind of get the word out. I'm so passionate about this. I mean, it's completely changed my life. So anything that helps to spread this message and just maybe, motivates people to make just simple, small changes. And that's the thing, that it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be scary and overwhelming. Just tiny changes can make a big difference.
Now, let me ask you this. Oh my gosh. Carley, everywhere I turn, I don't know the difference. And I'm very kind of aware of health. I've been in healthcare 35 years. I've been, a speaker, a champion. I've worked with my own cancer with with nutrition, right? And, they say a healthy gut won't host cancer, right? It just just doesn't do it. And so can you tell us, before we start going into prebiotics, probiotics, microbiotics, but can you please tell me what a healthy gut should feel like as an adult? All right, so just don't worry about, you can talk about poop. So how often are we supposed to go to the bathroom every day? Just some basic stuff, because honestly, I don't know.
That's such a great question, because I think, and as I notice this with a lot of my clients, that we start to feel normal. We think that it's normal to feel sick after we eat, or it's normal to not have regular bowel movements. What's regular bowel movements? I mean, that's, some people are like, oh, I'm regular, it's like a couple times a week. Well, that's regular to them. That's not healthy. That's not normal. So it's a good thing to define, because I think we kind of create our own, especially if we're not feeling well for long periods of time. We just start to assume that that's the normal. So you shouldn't have complications after eating, digestive discomfort. You should feel good. You should feel satiated. You shouldn't have food intolerances. There might be some things that maybe you're sensitive to, but overall, you should be able to tolerate most foods in their properly prepared forms. And also have regular bowel movements, meaning 1 to up to 3 times a day. I mean, it really depends on people's lifestyle and their diet, and kind of, what they're doing. But there's a lot that goes into that. And also, immune system, that's all tied back to the gut. So how are you feeling energy levels wise? Are you sick frequently? All of those things can be tied back to the gut. So just that overall general, looking at your health can give you a really big insight into what's all going on in the gut.
Amazing. And, it's funny, I'm helping to raise children, 11 and 7, my grandkids. And I realized that all their friends and even their school just feed anything, right? Like half of the kids there are lactose intolerant, yet almost everything has cheese or milk. The food has the first 20 ingredients are chemical names. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're not even aware.
Right.
We think that digestive health is a given. So as a kid, for our kids, we don't really think about it. We don't even care about it. We just give them sugar cereal and milk to start the day and end it with chips and ice cream. I mean, it's really awful, right?
Mhm.
It's really awful. And we like treats is sugar. It's like you can say, "Oh, look at this amazing plate of grapes." Me. Everybody knows I'm like a grape fiend with grapeseed extract and grapes. But that's not a treat. The treat is the ice cream bar or the brownie. When are we let's start there. What is a healthy children's diet in the United States? Given the fact that they go to birthday parties, given the fact that they eat at school, what are some of the things we need to look for and look out for and to be aware of?
Sure. So definitely making sure that you're getting plenty of fiber into the diet. And doesn't just go for children. This goes for adults as well, that our diets are significantly lacking in fiber. I would say that fiber is one of the biggest nutritional deficiencies. And fiber is extremely important because it feeds the good bacteria in the gut. So if you back up for a minute and you talk about what constitutes a healthy gut, well, it's basically a collection of good bacteria and fungi that are living in the gut. This is your microbiome. And what happens is when you don't get enough food that feeds the good bacteria, they die or they eat away at the gut lining, which can contribute towards leaky gut. And then what happens is you get this overgrowth of pathogens. And that's where all of your problems start coming from. Significant, or one of the biggest ones that you see with that is Candida, the overgrowth of the pathogenic fungi. And what happens with this is that, what's that?
I said, ooh.
Yes, we don't want that. It actually will start telling your brain what it wants to eat. So this can be where a lot of your cravings coming from. If you crave sugar, sweets, starchy carbs, breads, noodles, things like that, that's actually the pathogens in the gut telling your brain what they want to eat. So if you...
That's science? That's scientifically proven?
Yes. The Candida will regulate a lot of your cravings. Exactly. So it's, so sometimes it can kind of give people a little bit of a relief. Then I tell my clients that it's not you necessarily, it's your bacteria talking. So if we can get that under control and start populating the gut with more beneficial organisms, generally a lot of those cravings will subside. So, especially with everybody, incorporating more fiber into your diet will help to feed the good bacteria, and that in turn will suppress a lot of the pathogenic organisms. So fiber is very important, but if you have a compromised gut, it's kind of a catch-22 because you might not be able to digest fiber. And especially if you're starting to increase fiber, one of the biggest things you might notice is digestive discomfort, excessive gas. You don't have the bacteria needed to break that down quite yet. So a couple things you can do to mitigate that. One, incorporating a digestive enzyme. Most of us have too little stomach acid as compared to too much. So digestive enzymes start decreasing by the age of 20. So most of us should actually just be on a digestive enzyme. They also decrease with stress, medications, and diet. So many of our issues just stem from our gut not being able to properly digest food. So incorporating an enzyme will help break down that fiber a little bit better.
What is a digestive enzyme? Now, do you have a quick question? Do you have products on your website?
I have a link on my Instagram page to my Amazon storefront. So you can shop all of the supplements that I recommend for digestive enzymes or probiotics in that. And that's, and also on my online course that I have, there's videos and links to all the supplements that I recommend that you can buy.
Tell me what a digestive enzyme is. What's a natural source for a digestive enzyme?
There are a few actually. Bromelain, which is in pineapple, papaya, actually fermented foods like sauerkraut, even kombucha, apple cider vinegar. Those can all help to stimulate your digestive enzymes. And then you can shop supplements that contain a lot of these natural digestive enzymes. You might also find some with hydrochloric acid and pepsin. Those are also two naturally occurring digestive enzymes in the stomach. So really just kind of looking out for those. If you, I would say that if you have, some sensitivities or hiatal hernias or anything like that, you might start out with a more food as medicine food-based enzyme like a bromelain or a papaya. But either way, any of those enzymes are generally very helpful in helping to break down your foods a little bit better. Once your foods are broken down better, they're more easily absorbed into the system.
And, we have 5 platforms listening to us and jumping in and jumping out. But I just got a question that on a message on LinkedIn, which is, how do you know your gut is healthy? Now, I know you sent me a slide, but that's a really good question. How do you know whether your gut is healthy? Could I be tired and fatigued or depressed or any of those things from gut? So I'm going to put this up for you. Can you see it okay from where you are?
There's a little bit. I think there's a comment thing that's
yes. I will get rid of the comment, and there we go.
Perfect. So yeah, those are that's from my Instagram page. I post a lot of infographics of people that little helpful tips. These are just a few warning signs of an unhealthy gut. So how would you know if your gut is healthy? Well, obviously, number one, if you're struggling with any sort of digestive issues, gas, bloating, constipation, trouble, food sensitivities, those are number one red flags for some sort of issue going on in the gut. But also, there's a lot of different things that you might not think that are related back to the gut. For instance, nutrient deficiencies. If you have a leaky gut, which means that there's permeable gut lining and you're getting toxins and foods seeping into the system, you're not properly absorbing the nutrients. Nutrients are absorbed not only through bacteria, but also through the gut lining. So if you're not properly absorbing your nutrients, you're going to have nutrient deficiencies. But food cravings, we just talked about that. That can be an overgrowth of pathogens in the gut and chronic illness and infection. I mean, think about, if you're constantly run down, you're constantly getting sick, autoimmune conditions, most diseases now can somehow in some way be traced back to the gut. So I always tell people that start with the gut. It's the foundation for our health. And then sort of peel back the layers and see, what else needs to be addressed after that. But more often than not, the gut solves most of the issues.
Can I ask you, I know how long have you been working in the digestive industry? Digestive, I don't know, as a digestive consultant. How long have you been doing this?
For about 8 years now.
Wow. So can you give me a story or two of testimonial of something that even surprised you?
All of my clients surprise me, and I'm honestly inspired by all of my clients. I learn from them, quite honestly, and I think it's remarkable everything that is tied back to the gut. That maybe someone comes to me for one thing, but it ends up healing something else. They come for some sort of digestive issues and they realize they don't have asthma anymore, or food allergies or seasonal allergies have improved. I had a client once who had just debilitating eczema. I mean, she barely could wear clothes. She was just draped in a blanket. She couldn't come out of her house. And I put her on the GAPS diet and worked with her through a gut healing protocol. And she's amazing. And she actually her cholesterol is better. Her lifestyle's improved. Her energy levels have improved. So, it helps more than just what you think. And doctors told her they were doing skin grafts and surgery, and medications weren't working. So, there's a lot of things that people might not think about being the gut that are tied back to that. So it's always just such a great place to start.
As teenagers, we hear, and it could have been, but don't eat certain foods for acne. I mean, I don't know what's real or what's not, but eating a whole lot of sugar can't be good for your skin.
Sure. Skin is a huge flag for, red flag for gut issues. So acne, eczema, rosacea, those are all, the skin actually has its own microbiome. So there are several microbiomes throughout the body.
Can you explain what a microbiome is to those of us that are not aware?
Microbiome is basically that collection of beneficial organisms. So you're thinking about bacteria and fungi, good bacteria and fungi, and that's really what kind of creates that healthy microbiome. So when you get an overgrowth of pathogens, that's when things kind of start getting out of whack. But there are several microbiomes throughout the body. There's one in the mouth, the lungs, the gut, the skin, and the vagina. But the gut is the mother of all the microbiomes. So generally, if you have skin issues, or if you have thrush, which is overgrowth of candida in the mouth, it's usually, let's start with the gut, and then that can fix those other areas, or you might have to treat them more localized, but it's really kind of that foundation.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know what your second slide is, but it seems like it's about time to bring that up. Oops, I can't quite easily do that. Let me just go back to my share screen and hold on just a second. I apologize.
No, you're good. No worries.
I know I have to go get it. Because I know you had a second one. I'm going to stop and I'm going to go and grab it again. Okay, here it is. Come on. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead and talk about, if we listen to what you're going to tell us, how does our health and our lives improve?
Yeah, so it's just, what I was saying with some of my other clients, you'll notice that there are other things that, maybe you were struggling with an autoimmune condition or digestive issues, but something else ends up improving as you start to work on the gut. And, that can obviously be your immune system, inflammation, improved mood. So there's a lot of research between the gut and brain axis. And in fact, there's the majority of your serotonin, which is the feel-good neurotransmitter, is actually produced in the large intestine.
What?
Yes.
In the large intestine?
Yes. So, depression, anxiety, neurological disorders, cognitive function, all relates back to the gut. In fact, that was one of the things that I first noticed when I started working on gut health with Lyme disease. I'd forgotten where I lived. I was driving home from work. I mean, I had lost basically nearly all cognitive function. I couldn't get out of bed. As I started working on healing the gut, my memory started coming back. And that was one of the first things I noticed, that it was easier for me to recall information. It was easier for me to think. So that's a huge, huge benefit for gut health is improved mental clarity. Yes, so brain fog.
Even dementia as we age.
Yes, dementia is absolutely linked back to the gut.
Oh my gosh. Can you talk a little bit about that? Well, in the next slide, you're going to talk about the kinds of foods we should eat. And then I'm going to really kind of narrow in on like my problems. No, I'm going to narrow in as if I'm someone coming to you for a one-on-one kind of relationship. So let's just go through this, maybe talk a little bit about the GAP diet and then the other slide that you have. And then we can also do some question and answers. So
absolutely. Great. Sure. So the GAPS diet is, like it says, it stands for Gut and Psychology Syndrome. It's an elimination and reintroduction diet. So basically, in the very beginning stages of the diet, you're eating a lot of cooked meats and vegetables and bone broth. And I am a huge advocate for bone broth. Bone broth is basically when, or stock as people call it, but you're essentially simmering a carcass or bones in water with veggies for anywhere between 12 to 24 hours, straining that and then consuming that. You can sip on it, throw that in all of your recipes. But the idea behind bone broth is that you're extracting all of those nutrients from the bones, the cartilage, the collagen, the proteins, the connective tissues. And those are so important for the gut because they're not only healing your entire GI tract, but they're also helpful in healing the gut lining. So when I talked a little bit earlier about leaky gut, it's really helping to repair those holes in the gut lining. You want a nice healed and sealed gut lining. And I give this analogy that the gut lining is like a garden hose. You know what happens when you get kinks in the garden hose or holes in the garden hose? There's water splurting out everywhere. It's unpleasant and annoying. And that's the same thing that's going on in the gut. you want this nice healed and sealed lining. If you have holes in the gut, you're getting toxins, undigested foods, all sorts of things seeping into the system. So broth is very nourishing to the gut lining. That's one of the things that you're incorporating those very early stages of the GAPS diet, as well as lots of cooked meats and cooked vegetables. Those are much easier to digest. And then as you start to progress.
Can I ask you a question about bone broth? Does chicken broth do the same thing?
Yes, chicken broth, beef broth, you can do an entire chicken carcass. In fact, that's one of my favorite broths to make, is just throwing a chicken carcass in a pot and making the broth that way.
Okay, I'm making notes here because that's fascinating. I don't eat beef. I actually have been tested. Growing up, I couldn't eat it, and I thought it was because, I'm a great animal advocate. But honestly, it turns out that as an adult, I've tested allergic to pork, beef, and poultry. But I still eat
Oh,
poultry,
wow.
and I shouldn't. But yeah, I have actual allergy to it. It was just very odd. So, but I do love chicken broth, but I don't like the stuff you buy in a store. So
no, it's better to make your own. Although there are some brands out there that are making some really great products, so you just have to kind of look for them. And I think somebody asked if you can add collagen powder. Is that the same as broth? And that's a really great question. So there's a couple different things. So with collagen powder, one, just really want to make sure that you're reading the labels and you're sourcing a good kind from a good quality brand, because there's a lot of collagen powders out there, and so not all of them are as good of quality. But I do love collagen powder, and I like the way I look at collagen
you froze on us.
powder is it's more of in healing the gut lining. And then bone broth, I look at it as more nourishing for the entire GI tract and entire gut lining. So you're still getting some of those same benefits from collagen powder. It is going to help, heal the gut lining and maintain that elasticity of the gut for the skin. Great source of protein. But I also believe that there is something very healing about drinking and consuming bone broth as well.
And even hot teas always make my belly feel better. I mean, I've lived in the Caribbean, and it's amazing. Like anytime your stomach hurt, I had this most amazing housekeeper, and she'd say, "Well, is it bloated or is it sharp pain?" And then she would always be able to brew a hot tea, and I swear to you, it always worked. Whether it was peppermint or whether it was sage, whatever it was, she was able to heal my gut with a hot herbal thing. There's a question from a LinkedIn user. What about your clients that are vegan and vegetarians?
Yes, that's a great question. So the diet and the slide that we have up is from my online course and from the diet, that it is applicable for vegan and vegetarians too. So there's just some other modifications that you can make. So instead of using meat as your protein source, there's dairy for vegetarians. And then if you're vegan, obviously you can just modify that with some of the legumes and other options there as well. So there's definitely other options. And as far as vegan and vegetarian options for bone broth, there's a couple things that I recommend. One, L-glutamine, which is plant-based. It's an amino acid, basically.
How do you spell it?
It's just the letter L and then glutamine, Glutamine. And so it's basically a building block of protein. It will also be helpful in healing the gut lining and maintaining that integrity of the gut lining. I also have a recipe for a vegetarian broth on my website, and that uses a lot of vegetables that are also very high in L-glutamine, like celery, carrots. So trying to extract a lot of those nutrients from the veggie broth as well.
Great. And your website is www.fairygutmother.com. Yes. Now, are you a proponent of what do we call it? Fasting, detoxification? When a client comes to you that has everything from heartburn to being diagnosed with colitis, I was diagnosed with colitis, and it turned out I was just allergic to food. like meats, proteins, those enzymes, they can really mimic more serious diseases. But what do you suggest? Where's the starting point for people who come to you for help?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So, it's really just little changes. You don't have to change everything all at once. One, I would bring in a digestive enzyme helping to break down your foods a little bit better. Two, I would bring in a probiotic helping to populate your gut with that beneficial bacteria. And then three, working on cleaning up the diet a little bit. So, incorporating a little bit more fiber, but also reducing the amount of processed foods and sugar that you're consuming, because earlier I talked about how those feed the pathogens, and that's really important to think about. So you can take a probiotic all day long, but if you're still eating foods that feed pathogens, it's not going to do a whole lot. So incorporating a little bit more good quality foods, reducing some of the more processed foods. And then like I said, I'm a huge fan of bone broth. So I would definitely be incorporating that in, and especially if you have that bloating and discomfort after eating. A lot of people notice that if they sip on broth also helps to naturally boost your digestive enzymes. So that can also help, if you have sipping on that with your meal or after a meal or cooking your food in it.
What about weight management and healthy gut? I mean, we've
Yes.
heard that just starting to take a probiotic. Now, I'm a big component of a product that, in all disclosure, I also sell, but it is called Must Natural, and it's 100% grape seed and muscadine grapes, a very superior grape, rich in resveratrol and polyphenols, but also functions as a probiotic. Works on the stomach. And I will tell you, and I swear on my Pekingese, who I'm about to kick, my little dog who keeps bothering me, that I haven't had heartburn in going on a year and a half, taking this regularly. And that used to be an issue, right? Especially with anything fried, I would immediately that night suffer. So that's gone, even though every once in a while I'll still do something fried or a grilled cheese or something that used to kill me before, or orange juice I could never drink. So I guess my question to you is, uh, you know, is something like a grapeseed supplement, a whole fruit, a superfood, are those kind of gut balancers? Like, how does that stuff work?
Absolutely. So, I mean, specifically about grapes, you mean the muscadine grapes,
Oh no,
or?
get anything. I mean, we know that the muscadine grape is a superfood, and we
Right.
know that it works on our digestive system. I don't exactly know how,
Mhm.
but we know that. So, are there certain foods, like is blueberry good for the belly? Are there certain foods that are higher in kind of an anti-inflammatory response that helps our digestive system?
Sure. So all of those, blueberries, anti-inflammatory foods, foods that are high in polyphenols, which are usually the colorful foods. I mean, it really does go back to eat the rainbow. So thinking about all the different colorful fruits and vegetables, eating foods that are seasonal is a really big thing. Also, I really strongly recommend sourcing from a local farmer, not just because it's better to support your local farmers, but there's a lot of research about the microbiome as it relates to our soil health. So a lot of our microbiome comes from the soil, and the foods that we're eating are, from have been transported for thousands of miles, and some of them aren't even grown in the ground anymore, that we're losing a lot of that soil health and that microbiome health. Plus, farming practices, we're over farming, we're not tending to the soil, so our foods are lacking in those nutrients. And so a lot of times it's can be helpful to source more from your local farms, those fresh fruits and vegetables. That also helps to get that good bacteria back in the gut.
Our LinkedIn audience is very active tonight, which is great. What about diabetes and gut health, especially with delayed emptying? And I know there's all the injectables that are so effective in increasing insulin sensitivity and decreasing, dangerous glucose levels. also really mess with the digestion. They slow it down considerably.
Mhm.
This, I think, might be the question this user's asking.
I mean, absolutely. Diabetes definitely goes back to the gut. And especially to your point earlier about weight loss being in the gut too. I mean, so there's specific species of bacteria that trigger that overgrowth of basically it's an overgrowth of pathogens. And so it kind of goes back to those simple principles earlier about maintaining that healthy microbiome and that healthy balance of good bacteria and fungi in the gut, making sure that you're incorporating those foods that feed the good bacteria, those fiber-rich foods, reducing your processed foods and sugar. Obviously, with diabetes, reducing the foods that being mindful of the foods that spike your blood sugar levels as much, but that also can be helpful in supplementing with a prebiotic as well, or prebiotic fiber. So you've got your probiotic, which is the bacteria, and then prebiotic is basically a nutrient that feeds the good bacteria in the gut. So it acts like a fiber. It typically is a fiber. It doesn't always have to be, but it is something that acts as a catalyst. It feeds the good bacteria. So it helps to kind of promote that healthy microbiome overall.
Oh, that's fascinating, because I always wondered what the difference between prebiotic and probiotic was. And, to be frank, I want to get this other LinkedIn question, please, answered. Is there a recommendation of organic versus not? Do you respect the organic label?
So there's something from the environmental working group called the Clean 15 versus the Dirty Dozen list. So those are the ones that you should be buying organic, or doesn't necessarily matter as much. There's the least amount of, on the Clean 15, the least amount of trace pesticides used, versus the Dirty Dozen, which is the ones that you usually always want to buy organic, like berries, fruits that have more of like a thin skin. But especially now with prices being so high and it just being so hard to afford, it just encourages you to go back, even more to your farmers and to the local farmers and meet with them and talk to them about their farming practices, because the organic label is very hard and labor intensive and expensive to get. So a lot of times farmers have better than, organic quality farming practices, but they just can't afford the label and the upkeep of that. So just knowing where your food comes from, talking with the farmers about, maybe they have what kind of practices they use, and you don't necessarily have to have the organic label. But I would say, check with your farmer, and then that Clean 15 versus Dirty Dozen, and that's a good place to start.
Thank you. I'm sitting here and just my mind is clicking, right? Because this is so fascinating. And we have so many expressions in the English language, have a gut feeling, which means I have intuition. And I remember reading a very interesting nonfiction book on migration of cells. And this is when I had cancer, and I was reading everything on the spreading of cells, the proliferation of any kind of cells. And I remember reading one very interesting just research that in the brain, you don't find stomach cells. In the brain, you don't find heart cells. In the brain, you find brain cells. In the lungs, you find lung cells. But in the stomach, you can find heart cells, brain cells. It's crazy. Have you heard this?
Yes.
Okay, tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it goes back to say that everything relates back to the gut. I think that when I read something about when in the uterus, when you're forming, that the gut and the brain are the first things to form, and then it breaks off. That's how they're connected. Then
and that's
the gut,
how they get cells.
Right, and then the brain, and then they're connected by the vagus nerve. So it's like, at one thing, we're all it is all one, and it is all connected. And I think that's an important thing to drive home too, because I think so many of us are struggling with health issues, and we don't always connect them, think that things are related, that maybe if I have heart issues or lung issues, that it could be related back to the gut somehow. even pain or fibromyalgia or energy levels, that we're so disconnected, thinking that there's no way that, if I'm struggling with something in my brain, that it's somehow related to what I'm eating or gut health. But it's actually the complete opposite, that it really absolutely has an effect on that. And everything is connected within the body, and everything is related.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of, I think we knew this 100 years ago. And then kind of the Industrial Revolution decided to separate every system of the body and have a different specialist addressing that system. And no one really needs to talk to each other, which is just bogus, right? If you cut the limbs of a tree, eventually the trunk dies. It doesn't bear fruit. Then, eventually it just falls over. And so, systemically, that's how we have to look at our bodies. I love, though, and I'm going to say it and I'll probably mess it up, but it's such a poetic image for me that when we're born, our brain and our stomach are formed at the same time. And somewhere in there is this primitive heartbeat. So for the rest of our lives, if we can just think of that trio as being the foundation of our health, stomach, brain, heart, stomach, heart, brain, heart, stomach, and really with no differentiation.
Yeah.
That's really cool stuff. We have another LinkedIn. I love my LinkedIn tonight. Thank you, guys. What about the hydropods that are so popular now, growing things versus growing them in the ground? I have that question too. Like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it goes back to the point I was making about sourcing from your farmers and how important that is for sourcing foods that are actually in the ground. I think that the indoor farming and vertical farming it can be great in urban areas and supplemental, but I don't think it's the solution. And I think that can be scary to transition to our food system coming from indoor farms, because you really have to think about the soil health, that is where our food gets our nutrient, the food gets in the vegetables and the fruits and our greens, gets our nutrients from the ground, and then we consume that. That's where we get our nutrients. And that soil health is so important. That's what populates our gut with that beneficial organism. So our environment is so important as it relates to the gut. So I don't think it's a solution. I think, like I said, it could be great supplemental or maybe nice in some urban areas. And but I think it can be scary going down that road as an alternative.
Yeah, and it's very fascinating to me is what I've read about pregnant women, starving people, normal people eating soil, because there's minerals and enzymes and things in that soil that the body needs. And you would just imagine that if it's a food is grown in that soil, the transfer is a little bit more palatable than making mud pies.
Absolutely.
It's weird, but dirt is good for us too. That's
It is
the foundation of everything that grows. All
well,
right, now I'm
and
going to answer this LinkedIn. Oh, I'm sorry, you were going to
Oh
say
no,
something.
I was just going to say that it's also good for allergies as well, and seasonal allergies too. So, if you are experiencing allergies, one of the best things you can do is consume local raw honey, local produce. What that does is that helps to get that microbiome from the area and populating into your gut. You're getting some of those microbes. So, eating locally can really help with that.
There's a support group that I used to be on for food allergies and asthma, and so many drastic turnaround positive testimonials to local honey.
Oh, it's fantastic. It really is.
And besides also just being an antibacterial, I mean, I actually met the beekeeper at the same place I met you, and I'll buy different seasonal honeys, and I don't take one every day, but at least 3 times a week I will ingest it raw. I don't like anything in my tea, so I rarely put it in there unless I have an inkling of a sore throat. But the cool thing as I was researching honey is that it's like an antibiotic. It actually, as in a Petri dish, it will kill, bad bacteria. So it is just so exciting and fascinating to think about all the natural, when the name of this is Rethink Your Health. I learn something new every single week. And this week I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, gut and brain the same, right? Feed your and the abuse that we do to ourselves through diet.
It's
Too much
crazy.
food, wrong food, processed food,
Mm-hmm.
Burger King, Impossible Burgers. I mean, it's just insane. And when you look at those blue zones, right, those 7
Mm-hmm.
areas of the world where people laugh at you if you die before 100, basically, or what the heck was wrong with them? One of their key things is what you just stressed. They eat close to the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
They eat the natural. They do tons of probiotics, whether it's through kombucha or kefir, the
Yeah.
kind of yogurt, drinkable yogurt. That's what they do. Fresh
Mm-hmm.
food, pre and I guess probiotics, exercise, sleep, and good hot beverages and lots of water. And it seems to
Mm-hmm.
me that those are easy lessons.
It is. It
Listen,
is. Yeah.
so I'm going to help this next LinkedIn user, and I have another one behind them. That's exciting. But this one, I'm going to help you because Carley on fairygutmother.com offers an amazing online course. It's like $100, and it will. I'm going to take it. Like I looked at it and I thought, wow, if I were a doctor, this is the first thing I would read because so many of my patients, especially during COVID, have all these stomach upsets, and this has curriculum for that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, LinkedIn user, Carley is available, and it's also really inexpensive. It's 3 months for around $395 to actually help you through, to coach you, to say, why do you want this knowledge? Here's where you go. Let's talk next week. Let's see the questions you have.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing resource. We so appreciate having that.
Thank you.
So, am I missing something?
Yeah, I mean, my course is designed off of the diet that I've put together. It's clinically researched. I partnered with Case Western University and University Hospitals in Cleveland, and we put together a diet and we administered a study to see how it affected the microbiome over 28 days. And it completely reduced Candida, and we saw a lot of healthy growth in the beneficial organisms. So, and it's a easy diet to follow. And that's one of the things about gut health that I really, want to drive home for people, is that it doesn't have to be difficult. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Just really small changes make a big difference. And my course is very easy to kind of walk through. People can do it on their own. It has all of the resources that you need. Helpful videos, cooking demos, what to do ifs, like things that you can troubleshoot on your own.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a newsletter or any other? It's just constantly to come back to your blog, or your website?
I do. I have a monthly newsletter. It goes out the first of every month. And so usually if you go to my website, fairygutmother.com, it'll have a pop-up that you can type in your email on that. And I'm very particular about my newsletter. I only send out one email since I started. I'm like, I will never blast your email. It's just once a month, and I promise you. And it's got new exclusive recipes every month, and then I put gut health information in there. So yes,
so go on there, guys. If you're listening, if you listen to this, we usually have at least 100 listeners, about 70 to 80 when we're on, and then about 100 afterwards. So we're growing, and it's exciting.
Oh,
but
good
people
for you.
do
That's
come back.
awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. It's hard in this day and age to get podcast loyalty and traction. But, people want to rethink their health. We're tired of being sick. But let's take this last question. What are your thoughts, albeit somewhat controversial, on childhood gut health role with ADHD, autism, etc.? And to piggyback on that, what about mental health and depression as well? Great, great question.
Sure. And actually the GAPS diet, which I talked a little bit about earlier, gut and psychology syndrome, that was actually formulated based on the specific carbohydrate diet. And the doctor that put together the GAPS diet, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, was trying to heal her son who was autistic. And that's how the diet came about. So it's a very effective diet for kids working with autism and ADHD. So it's definitely a lot of research that goes back to the gut on that. Issues during birth, or medications for newborns. So there's a lot of information that goes back to that. But that diet is incredibly helpful for children with that. And as far as mental health goes, absolutely. I mean, it absolutely relates back to the gut. The gut and the brain are connected via the vagus nerve. So a lot of depression, anxiety, neurological issues all relate back to the gut. But it's always the foundation.
Where do you feel it? Most people feel it in their gut. I mean, when you're studying for exams, or when I was, defending my dissertation, I was in the bathroom every 20 minutes. Right?
That's right. There's a truth to the gut feeling. I mean, there's a lot to be said about that. And, so that's why I tell people it's the foundation. Just start with the gut, and then you can peel back the layers from there. But more often than not, just working on healing the gut lining, populating the gut with beneficial bacteria, and incorporating a digestive enzyme can have a huge impact on overall health.
Oh, you are amazing, fairy gut mother. I have I just posted up. Mike Beverly is our guest next week. He is a lifestyle coach. He is a health and wealth coach. He's an amazing, inspirational person that I've been following on LinkedIn. And hopefully, Mike, next week you can tell us about this amazing doctor here in Florida who's done some amazing work with autism. I will tell you that my young man here, my 11-year-old, was diagnosed with highly functional autism and defiance disorder. And I will tell you, there's a definite link to high sugar, high carb, low fiber, low protein, and low healthy carb diet, and his bouts of resistance. Right? Mm-hmm. I don't know, I don't know how that works. I don't know how, God created these systems of our body that, when it's a little bit intoxicated with something, whether that's sugar or alcohol or high fat meals, cause us to behave crappy. And absolutely. I think it's not just kids with autism, it's all of us. Absolutely. I remember having PMS, and if I gave into my cravings for a bag of chips and a bucket of dip, the next morning you couldn't be nice to me. There was so it is so, oh my gosh, it's so cool. I hope that anybody that is excited about this, and we are about ready to put up our Rethink Your Health website. So I'm excited because I'd like to put links to you and the work that you do, especially to promote your newsletter and this course. I mean, this could be the best $100 steak dinner you don't buy, and instead, listen to wisdom and 8 years of having cured herself and hundreds of other people from misery. Because you know what? When your stomach is a mess, when you are bloated, when you have stomach pain, when you have constipation or diarrhea, there is no way that you're enjoying life. Right. And life as we know it right now is far too brief to live it any way else except joyfully and out of pain. Absolutely. Wow. All right. I'm going to ask you the one question I ask all the guests because I write them down and it means a lot to me. So here's the fill in the blank question. I once thought that health was blank, but now I know that health is blank. Go ahead. You're on the spot.
Oh no, you should have told me so I could have thought of something so much better,
Smart.
Well, to be honest, I didn't really think much about health before. So I guess I didn't think that health had such an impact or gut health, I guess, had such an impact on our overall life. I felt everything was very disconnected. I was that person that was like, well, how does that relate back to that? There's no way. So after what happened, dealing with Lyme disease and now everything that I've learned, I realized that how interconnected everything is and how really that this truly is the foundation for our health. So it really doesn't matter what you have going on, how you're feeling, mood, just energy levels, whatever it is, it all kind of comes together. It's absolutely all related in some degree.
And I guess as it's getting later and we're all getting ready for sleep, the role of sleep on gut health. Have you seen correlations or studies around that?
Yes, I'm actually doing a podcast next week talking about sleep
Oh,
and
you
the
have
gut
a
health.
podcast?
No, I'm on somebody's podcast next week, but
Oh,
he's a
okay.
sleep expert, and so we're talking about sleep in the gut. But this is one of the biggest things, and stress, and I can't say this enough, but how important stress is to gut health. And I talk a lot about the gut health lifestyle. It is not just diet; it's making sure that you're managing your stress levels. Our bodies are not designed to endure the stress that we are as humans. We are so overstimulated, and it's just actually clinical research says that stress is more damaging on the gut than junk food, and that's clinical research that states that. So,
I'm not going to feel so bad about my Burger King Impossible Burger. I'm going to go to bed early.
no, exactly. It balances it out.
I'm going to take a walk, I think. So
there you go.
listen, my love, you are an amazing,
Oh,
glowing
thank you for
expert,
having me.
full of not just intelligence and credibility, but really with a passion for helping
Oh,
people
thank you.
heal their guts. So once again, please feel free to get in touch with Carley Smith, our fairy gut mother. She is at www.fairygut. Now no one's going to forget that. fairygutmother.com. And access her course, or first just subscribe to her newsletter. Her website, I still have to ask you who designed it, is really, really phenomenal, accessible, simple. And then consider, especially right now, before the fall comes, before stressors come and holidays, consider going through a 3-month gut healing using this GAPS diet and Carley's knowledge. So I really appreciate our evening. Thank you for being with us,
Tanya.
Carley.
Thank you so much.
LinkedIn mostly tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And you are on LinkedIn, correct?
Yes, I am. And then on all social media, just at Fairy Gut Mother, follow me. I do a lot more on Instagram and Facebook
than anything
but
else.
Yes,
all right.
I'm on LinkedIn. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week with Mike and all about health and wealth, lifestyle, and how it's all interrelated. Thank you so very much. Bye-bye and good night.
Thank you. Bye.